everybody, and welcome back to the Blossom Review. How are you? As a huge fan of Hospital Playlist, this week's review was a no-brainer. Of course, we're talking about TVN's Resident Playbook, the Hospital Playlist spin-off that came to an end last Sunday, May the 18th. Resident Playbook is a 12-episode series whose characters live in the same universe as the characters from Hospital Playlist. They work for the same hospital as the original cast, just for a different branch, which allowed the show to offer lots and lots of guest roles and create connections with the original series with Hospital Playlist. If you're not familiar with the plot, Resident Playbook follows the lives of 4 first-year residents who join the OBGYN ward at the Jongno branch of Youn-jung Medical Center. Now, let me clear something up before we start. We are not here to compare Hospital Playlist and Resident Playbook. Because even though Resident Playbook does rely on the familiarity of the universe and those characters that we were used to seeing in Hospital Playlist, I do believe that Resident Playbook is a series with its own identity, and I think it proudly exists as a very solid standalone story. But before we start our spoiler-free review, we need to talk about how miraculous it was for the show to even come out. Now, if you already know this story, feel free to skip to the next chapter, it's absolutely fine. But if you don't know, let me tell you that Resident Playbook was fated to be a catastrophe. And why? Because the production of Resident Playbook actually started back in May 2023. And principal photography, so filming, took place between October and December 2023? Yes, if I'm not mistaken. So TVN decided to release the show in the first few months of 2024. So the idea, I think the initial idea was March, and then they decided to release it potentially after Queen of Tears, so in May 2024. Problem was, in February 2024, medical professionals in Korea went on strike to protest new government policies. But the way these protests were framed by the media and the government actually undermined public trust in healthcare reform. And the public seemed to be heavily against the doctor's initiative. So, fearing the backlash, TVN, that was about to release a show about residents and doctors, decided to postpone the series. And then it postponed it again and again, until late last year when they announced that the series was cancelled until further notice. But then TVN was faced with another problem, because TVN had already signed the deal with Netflix to distribute the show internationally. So according to Pink Villa, Netflix put pressure on TVN to release the show because they couldn't keep it on hold indefinitely. So the production team of Resident Playbook saw themselves rewriting and reshooting some of the scenes to get the show ready for release. Then earlier this year, TVN announced that Resident Playbook would indeed air in 2025. So that's how Resident Playbook saw the light of day in April 2025. So it's been a saga for sure, but I'm so very glad that Resident Playbook managed to overcome their hurdles, because I think that Resident Playbook is a story very much worth telling. Now, that doesn't mean that Resident Playbook worked like clockwork from the very beginning. I must confess the first episode is an absolute train wreck. For 1 hour and a quarter, we are presented with this weird mesh of cringy comedy, unlikable characters, immature decisions, and a sluggish plot. But just like our protagonists, Resident Playbook grows both on us and as a proper medical slice of life. Resident Playbook as a series perfectly feels like a first-year resident in itself. It's clumsy, it's fresh, it's timid, But just like any of us, after its first week, the show starts to blossom. The plot then finds its rhythm, the characters become more relatable and charismatic, and the setting becomes a lot more comfortable. Soon enough, Resident Playbook lulls us to a sense of calm and belonging and celebrates the joys and embarrassments of being a beginner. And that's the goal and the heart of Resident Playbook. We've all been a beginner once. We know the feeling of trying to do something for the first time, of joining a new team, of coming to terms with the logistics of a completely new place. This is not a series about thrilling and risky and rare medical cases that are solved by genius doctors. The opposite, actually. We are dealing with everyday occurrences and ordinary doctors. Nobody's asking these residents to be extraordinary, because Resident Playbook is a story about the mundane and about how difficult it is at first to even nail the basics. So our protagonists are honestly human, and there is so much beauty in the common, in the humane. Our days are full of defeats, yes, but they are also full of small victories. And through their everyday challenges, Resident Playbook finds the warmth and the delight and the color in the routine. Just like any other beginner out there, our residents struggle, they make mistakes, and they fail. They are far from perfect, both personally and professionally. But despite their shortcomings, they care and they want to help. But they still have a long way to go. Resident Playbook delivers a sharp finale in which its characters have started a process of change, but haven't turned into flawless versions of their persona. They're still the same people they were in the first episode, and yet you can clearly see there's something different about them. So Resident Playbook is a celebration of this journey of growth, one that starts on the first day but continues throughout our entire lives. It reminds us that it's okay not to know and to make mistakes and to ask for help, because we're constantly learning, no matter how experienced we may be. That idea helped Resident Playbook focus on generational differences. So the show clearly highlights the presence of Gen Z, or MZ generation as they call it in Korea, in the workplace. So you see that our young residents are more outspoken, they are more eager to find and stick up for work-life balance, and they are less eager to put up with the demands of hierarchy. As the episodes go by, the narrative allows these differences to work for both humor and character development, encouraging younger and older generations to learn from one another. The narrative then relies on this overarching sense of kindness and patience, which is ultimately delivered through the bonds that the characters create. As a slice of life, Resident Playbook establishes its narrative structure through small events that cause a change in our characters' inner world. Regardless of how fleeting they are, it is the relationships that professors, nurses, interns, residents, and patients establish that weave the plot of the series together. That's why Resident Playbook offers a slow-paced story, because it heavily relies on these ordinary dynamics whose effects pop up bit by bit every day. Now, here is important to mention that even though Resident Playbook does not join the current political discourse in Korea, because the medical crisis is still ongoing in Korea, it does offer a story that honors the work of doctors and nurses around the country. The UJ Medical Center is full of capable professionals who are overworked and exhausted, but who still do their very best every day. As hospitals house both life and death, you see these doctors and nurses navigating these two extremes, bravely greeting the ones who arrive and sending off the ones who pass away. They are given minutes to both grieve and rejoice before they have to go help someone else and go tackle a different challenge. Before they can dry their own tears, they have to push aside their own feelings in order to put the next patient first. So while this isn't a show about unusual medical cases, this is definitely a show about practicing medicine. The core of Resident Playbook lies in who these characters are as professionals and not as individuals. That's why we're only offered glimpses of their backgrounds and personal stories, because what happens outside the hospital isn't as important as what happens in it. And that's why we're only given enough to understand what makes these people tick. So our four protagonists don't have fully fleshed out backstories. We are offered a skeleton through passing conversations and random encounters, and the narrative uses that as motivation for their actions and reactions at work. And I think that's the backbone of their character development. Resident Playbook introduces us to this group of protagonists whose individual personality needs to give space to their identity as a doctor. Throughout its 12 episodes, we observe as the narrative teaches them to blend their character as individuals with their new self as a doctor, allowing both sides of their personality to shape and influence the other. That's also why romances make for a very quiet subplot in Resident Playbook, because they were never supposed to be the star of the show. And we are here to see these four characters evolve, and as they grow, they also get to know each other better and they grow closer. But we reach the last episode of Resident Playbook with these four characters as closer friends, but definitely not best friends, because they still have, I think they still have much to face together in order to ignite that sort of long-term friendship that you see in Hospital Playlist. And I believe this is the greatest difference between Resident Playbook and Hospital Playlist. Hospital Playlist explores both the professional and personal lives of its characters and introduces us to a group of characters who are pretty much family after years and years and years of friendship. They are already confident in their own identities, and as older characters, they face different kinds of challenges. Meanwhile, Resident Playbook focuses on young people who are still figuring out who they are and what they want. They've just met, they just started a new job, so everything is new and unknown. So we are presented with a completely different set of circumstances. In any case, I think Resident Playbook is just as warm and welcoming as Hostel Playlist because of how relatable these characters become throughout the show. You can't help but relate and empathize with them, and that's why I think Resident Playbook sort of has the same effect as Hospital Playlist. Now for my technical notes, photography is bright and colorful, which reflects the optimism of the script, and both set and costume design are excellent. However, I need to be a tad picky and say that the props and effects for the surgery scenes could have been a bit more convincing. It seems that they used a lot of practical effects throughout the show, but especially for the surgery scenes, they look very theatrical. But that shouldn't affect your enjoyment of the show, of course, unless you are looking for an extremely accurate portrayal of medical work. And of course, performances are flawless across the board, but I need to offer a special mention to Han Ye-ji, who plays Sabi. Sabi actually marks Eji's very first television role, so Resident Playbook is her debut work, and she navigated it with such grace and just as much charisma as any of her more experienced peers. So Han Ye-ji is an actress that I think we should keep an eye out for in the future, because I'm sure more fantastic projects are definitely coming her way. But the entire cast, I love all of them, and they are just so natural, especially the older cast, let's say. Don't want to say older, but the professors, they were all so natural, and it's just such a pleasure to watch all of them. It's just, it is perfect. I think their performances are perfect from beginning to end. So the final question is, should you watch Resident Playbook? I think that Resident Playbook started off on the wrong foot. Yes, it may have stumbled, but just like our protagonists, it got back on its feet and it kept moving forward. The result is a tender, heartwarming and profoundly humane journey of professional discovery and intergenerational encounter. It commemorates and encourages the beginner that lives in all of us, and it motivates us to appreciate and be a bit kinder towards our own mistakes and inexperience. Now, if you would like to watch an intense magical drama, Resident Playbook might not live to your expectations. But if you are looking for a gentle slice of life that just happens to be set in a hospital, then I think that Resident Playbook might just fit the bill. So Resident Playbook is on Netflix. Guys, quick reminder that our complete review of Resident Playbook is in the Blossom review. I'll leave the link in the description. Over on Substack, we talked about Korean and Japanese films at the Cannes Film Festival, so I'll also leave the link in the description if you want to take a look. Guys, thank you so very much for being here. Make sure to leave a comment and tell me if you enjoyed Resident Playbook too. I really hope you like the video and you subscribe so I can see you here every Thursday for a new video. So take very good care of yourself, have a lovely day, and I'll see you very soon. Big kiss. Bye.